not even going to ask a question, Paul. I'm just going to give that to you.
The chaos continues, and it continues to expand. Laura Loomer, involved in this entire conversation, is incomprehensible to me. She's a 9/11 conspiracy pusher. But take that and put it aside. When I initially saw the Waltz news, I said, okay, maybe there's finally some overdue accountability around SignalGate. Maybe that's what's happening here. But no, it turns out that Waltz maybe failed upward and now will be running the UN and putting Marco Rubio back in that situation with another job. By the end of the week, he might be Secretary of Defense, too. I mean, the real problem here is the ongoing chaos, the ongoing turnover in leadership, and our national security and our troops and our Pentagon are all in the crosshairs. And that has our national security apparatus, our troops concerned, and it has our enemies celebrating.
Garrett, I know you want to weigh in.
Yeah, I mean, look, Laura Loomer's been very aggressive with her views of who should be staffing the White House at basically every position. And I think it's important to remember, given that's her line of attack is about, Donald Trump as a candidate in 2016, whether Mike Waltz supported him. It is very true that Donald Trump values loyalty over almost everything else. I say almost because he values a convert oftentimes even more. And you don't have to believe me. You can ask his vice president. And so I'm not sure that those kinds of things are as damaging to Waltz as perhaps some of the performance-related issues around his job and SignalGate might have ultimately been.
All right, so Jake, let's talk more broadly about this. Waltz was somebody who had a safe seat in Congress. He was popular. The seat still remained with a Republican, but that support in that district was eaten away by Democrats. Elise Stefanik was going to be UN ambassador, but she is not being nominated any longer because they want to hold on to her seat. They're worried about majorities in the House. This chaos, how is it filtered down to how the House is doing its business and what they expect for the next couple of years?
Can I bring up a tangential point here, Katie,
Sure.
Which is, will Mike Waltz get confirmed as UN ambassador?
That's a really good point because he's going to have a confirmation.
I mean, let's talk about two facets of this. And I'm sorry to overtake your question here, but there's the first facet of whether he will get confirmed. I tend to think the answer is yes. I'm not very confident. This is all broken in the last hour or so. So I tend to think that even if nothing out of pity for the guy who left a very safe House seat and a seat that he would never lose, would never even be competitive for a couple months in the administration. That's the first thing to think about. The second thing to think about is why, in God's name, does the Trump administration want to reopen SignalGate up here, where there are members of the Senate, Republican members of the Senate? Roger Wicker called for an investigation into SignalGate. So why is it a smart legislative and political strategy to reignite that? I don't get it. And I also didn't get why Trump took 3 people from the House to begin with the margins that he had. So I don't understand it. I think he will get confirmed. But really, to be honest with you, this is a massive thumb in the eye, finger in the eye, whatever the saying is, to Elise Stefanik, who was nominated, was yanked, now is back in the House, has to fight for some committee slots again. And now Mike Waltz, who was in the administration, got booted and then got a plum job right afterwards. And no one has been more loyal to Donald Trump than Elise Stefanik over the last 8 or so years.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
just
credit where credit is due. That, I think, was a better question that you ended up answering there. I wonder, though, if there's some psychology, thank you, at play here. Donald Trump doesn't like, as we all know, to admit an error. I mean, there's a lot of reporting out there about how he was really upset about having gotten rid of Michael Flynn. He felt like he was caving to the bad press, the media, on getting rid of Michael Flynn the first time around when he was NSA in the White House. So he didn't want to do that with Mike Waltz. He didn't want to be seen as giving the media a win, even though Mike Waltz did something that was dangerous to our national security. You could also argue the same, by the way, for Pete Hegseth. So I wonder, and Garrett, I'll give this to you because you've gotten into his mind so well. I know that's part of the job there because Donald Trump is an emotional actor. Is part of this that he's not factoring in reopening SignalGate? He's not factoring in going and finding somebody outside of Washington because these are the folks that he knows. These are the folks that he wants. There's only a limited number of people that can pass that loyalty test and also still feasibly do the job?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is, given how recently this is all broken, let's call this informed speculation, not specific reporting. But I think you're on to the right idea here, that everybody involved in this now stays on the team, but in roles perhaps that allow the president to maybe get rid of somebody he doesn't want to see every day anymore. And, I'll point this towards the chief of staff in this administration, Susie Wiles, who might have found a more elegant solution by, pushing Waltz up instead of out to go be UN ambassador. Yes, you have at least one day of SignalGate stories if and when he sits for a confirmation hearing, and Democrats get to question him on the record about, under oath rather, about all this. But you don't have him out on cable news like John Bolton, another former NSA, is every single day as effectively an enemy of the administration. So you keep your, people you would otherwise have fired close enough to not be able to damage you, but far enough away that you don't have to deal with them anymore. That may be the way in which Trump 2.0 handles the inevitable staff shakeups that we're going to continue to see over the next 1,300 days or so.
Michael, what about you on that same story? I mean, that same line of thinking. This is, even though there's obviously still Donald Trump at the helm, it is at least slightly a different White House than it was the first time around.
Yeah, I think there's going to be continue to be changes within the administration. I think on SignalGate, there has been an important evolution from Trump since that story broke. If you remember, initially, he was attacking my publication. He was calling my editor names. His administration was just denying outwardly that there was anything improper that had been done, as if it had been invented by the press, by our reporting. And he is no longer using that line. I mean, there was a reason he invited Jeffrey Goldberg into the Oval Office last week to talk about this. There was a reason he put out on True Social, an acknowledgement that the Atlantic had success with that story. I think he has tried to distance himself from the initial news breaking, but he's no longer standing by the idea that everyone involved in this did nothing wrong, or that the only reason this came out is because there's enemies of his in the press. And so I think he's willing to take the hit on the Hill, probably, and by promoting Waltz up in a way. I mean, I still don't think maybe in title it's a promotion, but in terms of operational control or ability to shape U.S. foreign policy, it's clearly a demotion. I think he's fine with that as an outcome.
Jake, I'm going to ask you quickly the first question I had, which was, do they believe they're going to be able to maintain their majority in a couple years, not just with this news, but with the tariff news, all of the trickle-down effects of Donald Trump's leadership?
Publicly, yes, they do. They think that they say there are 13 Democrats rather in Republican-held districts that Donald Trump won effectively. But I can tell you up here, there's been a sense of nervousness this week, unlike anything I've seen on this topic. I mean, you're having people on the record say they better get this right and get it right quick on the economy. And remember, it bears repeating every day for the next 1,300 days if you're watching this stuff carefully. Every midterm is bad for the president's party, historically. Just it is. And you have to have a performance or an event that could overcome that. And they're about to do a lot of controversial things, Katie. They're about to change Medicaid. They're about to cut, $1.5 trillion from the budget. They think that the tax bill will be their savior, and it really just extends the current tax climate, doesn't change the tax climate for many people. So, I think it's tough, but we're 17 months away, and 17 months in Trump world is just, it's like a decade.
That's a good point. Jake Sherman, Michael Shearer, Garrett Haig, Paul Rykoff, you are sticking around.